Hi everyone, today we're going to be trying our hand at the obligatory skyblock style video that all Terraria YouTubers do. Like seriously, why is this the progression? I'm not complaining though, this game mode is sick. For those uninitiated, the skyblock genre of map originated in Minecraft almost 3 centuries ago, where you would spawn on an island floating in the sky, and the idea was to complete certain goals or tasks using only the resources you could procure in an isolated setting like this. The challenge was simple, but it would let you apply otherwise niche game knowledge in order to solve a series of problems that aren't there otherwise. This style of map was so popular, there were a series of spin-off maps that attempted to do the same thing, but in a remixed style that felt fresh. One particular offshoot of skyblock is called the One Block Challenge, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You would spawn on a lone block amongst an empty void, and the only course of action was to mine the block below you. What else could you do? On doing so, you receive the item and the block regenerates as another, ready to be mined again. Now, Terraria as a game is very different to Minecraft, despite what haters might say. Their only similarity lies in the sandbox aspect of the gameplay. Given this, it is only logical that skyblock maps started to crop up on Terraria too. You have your normal skyblocks, recreated one blocks, and in much later versions, shimmer block. In this video, you will see my journey through Terraria's take on the One Block Challenge, but I've got a little bit of a twist. A single glance at the title of the video or the thumbnail will tell you that I'm actually going to be doing this with the Calamity mod installed. This adds a ton of bosses and items that'll make it a little bit more interesting. Since it's not my first rodeo with this mod, we'll also be doing it in Master Mode and Death Mode. This will shake up the boss fights to be a lot tougher in terms of HP and AI. Our man for this mission will be Captain Block. His backstory is that he has blue hair. That's all. We go through world generation just as normal, making sure that the One Block mod is installed. Weirdly enough, changing the map to only contain a single block absolutely slices down on world generation time, so if you're a big fan of optimization, eat your heart out. We spawn into the world upon the titular One Block. I waste no time mining and getting a look at the resources we have available. In the undefeated boss state, we currently have access to the following blocks. All the basic ores like copper, tin, iron, lead, silver, tungsten, gold, platinum, dirt, mud, cloud, wood, sandstone, mud, snow, ice, sulfurous sand, acid wood, and diamonds. We are also granted a starter bag as part of Calamity's starting loadout, which just gives us a variety of early game assisting items. Notably, we get 3 chests, which will be a big help given the clutter we're about to engage in. While Captain Block works away in the background, I want to use this opportunity to talk about what mods we're actually using today. As I discussed earlier, I am using the Terraria One Block and Calamity mods both as the core, but I also have a few mods added to reduce the tedium. I have the Quality of Life Compendium, the Boss Checklist, Recipe Browser, Magic Storage, and Fargo's Mutant mod. Now, these are the mods that are actually recommended by the mod author, and the gameplay loop was designed with these in mind. Oh, and by the way, it also has full Calamity integration and we're able to progress through it all the same, so no worries there if that was something you were actually worried about. After a bit of mining, we have a fair chunk of resources. I figure that I can use the ice blocks and turn them into platforms, and make a huge platform to the right. Having this platform reach off screen will allow slimes to begin spawning. This gives us a source of gel, money, and other goodies we couldn't otherwise acquire. I set up the squirrel sentry I received as a starting gift underneath a poorly designed mob trap to automate the killing of zombies at night, but a lot of them would rather just jump to their deaths. After fixing the initial flaws in my design, I have this set up. It's not much, but it works. I shroud the small island I have with a layer of snow to block out the demon eyes and ravens of the night, each block making my soul cry with disgust. Now, I know I may only build shoeboxes, but I know when something looks bad, and this looks bad. After going AFK for a while with a weight sat on top of my mouse, I begin refining the ores I meticulously farmed into bars. This allows me to craft a platinum pickaxe and farm some more. I pair this with a yummy mining potion and suddenly we're blazing through. It almost feels like we're finally going to break this one block once and for all. Having a look through our available crafting recipes, I see that there is a recipe that allows us to craft iron crates. Now this is pretty massive, as their loot pool contains a lot of valuable accessories we couldn't get otherwise. Opening a few of them gives us a pair of sailfish boots and a tsunami in a bottle, which are both awesome starter items. I would say that these recipes aren't particularly balanced, but I'm sure there will be some trouble in some way later on. Now, sitting here and accumulating wealth is all well and good, but fans of the game may know that we can't actually finish the game without getting our hands a little dirty. We need to start fighting bosses, and soon. I create this little platform over to the east and plant corrupt seeds in the dirt to attempt to make an artificial corruption biome. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but stone actually won't turn into ebonstone in pre-hard mode, so this is a really inefficient design. I return to add a small wall so that the eaters that spawn won't beeline directly into my face. Proud of my effort anyways, I return to my house, gearing up with a platinum bow and a pile of wooden arrows. An aspect of the quality of life compendium is that having 1,000 arrows on you actually means that you have infinite arrows. Not for crafting purposes, but for firing purposes. I decide that the current inventory situation is freaking me out, and I really need my precious magic storage. If you're anything like me, you can't live without it. Luckily, the mod allows for the crafting of diamonds into any other type of gem. Now, this is usually the worst part about getting the materials for the system, so it was a really pleasant surprise. The bottleneck, as it turned out, was wood. We had barely any. I was burning through wood at an alarming pace and I needed a way to get more. Then I remembered, wood grows on trees. I create a new area to the west that is lined with dirt, cordoning off the sky creatures with a layer of clouds. I plant grass on the dirt and then acorns on the grass, and soon enough we're swimming in wood and lemons. Using all of the wood I acquired, I made a storage heart, a crafting interface, and 5 storage containers. This should house 200 items without upgrades and allow us to access every quote-unquote chest and crafting station at once. I had to do some musical chairs with the items to place the storage system in a better spot, but that's all just part of the fun. I jam all of my goodies into the system, and now we're finally cooking with gas. Now that we have all of our items systematically organized, we can browse every crafting recipe available to us. The neat thing about the crafting interface is that the recipes it shows are what you could make with a few crafting steps removed. For example, say you wanted to build a platinum pickaxe but you only had platinum ore and wood. The system would detect that you have enough ore to make the bars and therefore you have enough to craft the item. This is called recipe recursion and it can be enabled in the config for magic storage. I really recommend it. Using this recipe recursion, I am able to craft the fledgling wings and equip them. Now, getting back to the world, I finally realised that the corruption biome is not spreading, so I attempt to replace the stone with dirt. However, I am chronically lazy and this is just about as good as it gets with me. Another example of this is how I constructed the artificial jungle over here. It's very small, but luckily I won't be needing it for a while. I begin making the customary shoebox for my NPCs to move into. I stick with my guns and create this beauty, an 8-bedroom, no-bath gulag with the bare minimum of utilities, which is a lot better than a lot of us have right now in real life. The NPCs waste no time moving in, mostly just the ones you've all seen before like the merchant, party girl, guide, golfer and angler, and also some new and unusual characters like the Oracle and Deviant. The council permit came through, so now I'm allowed to build 6 more identical rooms above them, so that a few more residents can move in. Instantly, the lumberjack, the automaton, the nurse, the black market dealer, and the ethereal collector move in. The last 2 are pretty important, and we'll discuss them later. Now that we've given away all this real estate for free, we need to do what any good landlord does and fight a giant monstrosity right outside. I make sure that this is done either extremely early in the morning or very late at night so that the residents know how decent I am. I craft a ton of life crystals and then set up a small arena. Crafting the non-consumable slime crown, we can fight this guy as many times as it takes. On my first attempt, everything was going really well until he decided that he's done and he throws himself off the edge. I get the pop-up saying King Slime is no longer hunting you, but I think we all know what really happened. The next attempt ends with us just getting exploded by a ruby bolt from the crown jewel. They get really close, so I just try the fight again as soon as I kill the spike slimes that spawned last time. This fight works out a lot better. The diamond staff, able to do multiple hits at once, makes the fight a breeze. And then he jumps off. He jumps off again. Okay, this time we actually get him. We collect his treasure bag and relic and move on. The next boss on the list is technically Desert Scourge, but for now we have no way to face him. We need a desert biome and a few desert drops that we just don't have access to for now. I craft what sand I can and place it in a spot to the far east. It's a mere drop in the bucket, but we're getting there. In the meantime, I summon a goblin army using the banner we were provided at the beginning. It warns us that they are approaching from the east, so I ready myself for the invasion. Now the fight is nothing special, it goes pretty smoothly, giving us a couple of harpoons and plasma rods. Normally, beating the goblin army means that the goblin tinkerer will spawn tied up underground, so I get to making a couple of platforms to try and find the guy. One in the underground layer and another in the caverns layer. After patrolling them for what seems like an eternity, I decide to spawn a bunch of these undead miners for their armor set and money. The armor will allow us to grind the one block a lot faster, so it wasn't exactly time wasted. To kill some time, I used the dirt bomb trick to farm dirt blocks. I could just mine the block for dirt, but you can double the return on dirt using these, so I thought it would be way more efficient. For those who are unaware, dirt bombs cost 25 dirt and a bomb. When they explode, they create a circle of dirt. Mining this circle gives us around 50 dirt. Pretty simple, unless of course you throw them right off the edge. Since the progress on both the Goblin Tinkerer and Desert Biome was going really slow, I start setting up for the Eater of Worlds fight. I'm not sure if he enrages outside the corruption, so I play it safe and make the corruption much larger. Thankfully, artificial corruption biomes are much easier to make than desert biomes, so I don't have much trouble at all. I set up a few rows of platforms above it and farm the rotten flesh I need to craft a summoning item called worm food. I also craft 1,000 Jester arrows. Again, this makes the ammo infinite. Pairing this with a platinum bow and suddenly we have a worm killing machine. Summoning him, he begins his usual antics of worming about the place trying to eat us. He has a lot of health, but don't worry, he is super easy. Now would be a good as time as any to talk about the two funny bars up here. The red bar is Rage. This builds up slowly while in combat. At full rage, you can toggle it on and increase your damage output by 35%. The bar underneath it is called Adrenaline. This builds up during boss fights, but will reset after getting hit. At full charge, you can activate it to double your damage output. This stacks additively with Rage, giving 235% more damage for a small amount of time. Since the boss is so easy to dodge, we're able to pull off a few Adrenaline charges and easily defeat the worm. As per usual, the worm drops shadow scales, which allows us to progress to the next stage of armor. The one block also receives new items into its loot pool, namely Crimtane, Demonite, Meteorite and Obsidian. We craft a Deathbringer pickaxe and a full set of Crimson armor for its overpowered regeneration ability. I also finally decide to make a haul of all of the relics I've acquired. It's looking pretty light for now, but it will get better, trust. I set up for another long AFK mining session. There are a few resources I really want to get my hands on, namely some sand for the desert biome I'm creating. The meteorite is also really easy to get, so I switch out my crimson armor for the meteor set, allowing us a much more efficient use of the space gun, which is still actually a really busted weapon after all these years of it existing in Terraria. Isn't that interesting? I finally decide to talk to the black market dealer, who actually has a ton of things for sale we could have taken advantage of earlier. He sells a ton of different potions and accessories we would normally have to grind for, which is really helpful. Another aspect of the quality of life compendium is that having 30 of one potion in your inventories can give you the effect permanently, so we stock up on what we can. I had a weird feeling that there were more NPCs to get, so I build yet more housing into the sky. I know it's ugly, but it's functional. All of a sudden, I feel an evil presence watching me. I quickly rush to finish the houses and meet the Eye of Cthulhu in combat. He's nothing special really, whittling him down quickly using the absolutely busted space gun. I skipped over him in the progression, so it really wasn't a fair fight for him. I got his loot bag and most importantly, his relic. So it turns out that the Goblin Tinkerer doesn't actually need to be rescued, and he appears in my house while I'm AFK mining the 1 block. I don't realise this, as I'm pretty sure I'm not even in the room at that time, so it'll be some time before we even realise and talk to him. I decide to go and see if I can get an antlion to spawn in the small desert I have. Antlions don't actually need to be in a desert, they just need sand. Luckily, one appears, so I set up this station to have him shoot sand blocks at me repeatedly. These sand blocks do not get placed in the world because of anti-griefing measures from the Quality of Life Compendium, so it's pretty easy to get set up. The idea is to be in this small wooden tower and have a small line of sight to the antlion. As long as you're in there and in line of sight, he will launch sand towards you. He's not a very good shot, but sometimes he gets lucky. Every so often we take a little bit of damage, but we easily heal it back in time for the next hit. I sat idle for a long time, eventually getting us 922 sand blocks, which is nice because the requirement for a desert is that there are 1,000 sand blocks around you. This should get us started at the very least, so I get to work laying them out on the platform. Since I didn't pile them up very high, the biome hasn't actually changed yet because the density of sand in the area is still not high enough. I returned to my sand farming platform and I was lucky because a second antlion spawned, doubling the speed of the sand farm. I finally get enough for a desert biome, but it's still kinda small. It is a start though. Eventually, I'm happy with the size, so I set up 2 wooden pillars to show me where the biome ends and a beam that runs across the sky to fight the Scourge. It's here where I realised that I also need Stormline mandibles, which only drop from Stormlines in the underground desert. Foolishly, I try and create one of my own by cutting down the surface desert. This did not work and I really don't want to talk about it. Realising that the Ethereal Collector actually sells the mandibles, I am able to craft a desert medallion after all. After repairing the surface desert, I finally begin the Desert Scourge fight. Given that we progress pretty far beyond him, the Desert Scourge is a cakewalk. I get his treasure and his relic, reorganising the Hall of Accomplishments to add him in. I realise that the next boss I must face is Crabulon, who is spawned in a glowing mushroom biome, of which I have none. I go down to the underground layer and begin setting up one using mud and glowing mushroom seeds. Naturally, I can't sit still, so I will come back to him in time. I need to get 50 glowing mushrooms before I can craft his summoning item, which won't happen for a little while. At last, we finally meet with the Goblin Tinkerer, who allows us to buy the Tinkerer's Workbench. We can now craft some Frostspark boots, freeing up some accessory slots. Feeling really cocky, I talk to the bartender and get the equipment to face the Old One's army. I set it up in the desert because that's the only platform of solid blocks I have access to right now. My first attempt goes pretty well, up until the last wave where I get ravaged by wyverns. I wasn't really prepared for this, so in my second attempt I bought the Ballista Rod, which makes the fight so much easier. I complete the fight and the medals are mine. Using my vast wealth, I finally reforge all of my accessories to warding in every slot. This might seem like overkill, but I like to be prepared for anything. Since we can't fight Crabulon just yet, I settle on fighting the Hive Mind. He naturally spawns in the corruption as a hive tumor, and when it dies, it transforms into this hideous abomination. His fight is pretty interesting, and he behaves a lot like the Brain of Cthulhu if you just watch him. He has these little guys surrounding him, he spawns a bunch of garbage, and he will teleport away and spin around you. Not quite as confusing and psychedelic as the Brain, but definitely reminiscent of him. Naturally, the space gun makes quick work of him. I'm not sure why this weapon is still so busted, but the Hive Mind falls, dropping his precious treasure bag and his big, shiny relic. I'm not sure if it's a bug, but the boss checklist mod tells me that it's supposed to drop class emblems, so I fight Hivemind once more and none seem to appear. So I'm pretty sure this is just an error in the mod or a bug or something. He also drops the crafting material called Rotting Matter, which we can use in the Shade Rain Staff. It's a pretty decent magic weapon that inflicts damage over time, so I craft it and add it to my arsenal. It does great single target damage, whereas the Space Gun shines better with its penetration factor. Crabulon still eludes me, so I pretend I don't care and hook up with this Skeletron looking guy. He's not too difficult as long as I use the Shade Rain Staff, whittling him down with that excellent single target damage I was talking about earlier. His hands and his face both take intense damage. After a minute or so, we take him down, securing his treasure bag and his relic. Now that Skeletron is dead, Hellstone can now appear on the block's rotation. We do another quick AFK farm, amassing a small wealth of Hellstone. We also now have access to dungeon crates, which allows us to craft a cobalt shield. Naturally, we upgrade it into an obsidian shield immediately and reforge it to warding, as is tradition. We are also given access to aerolite ore, which we can craft into the aerospec armor after farming feathers from harpies in the space layer for a little while. Aero slimes also appear, dropping yet more ore for us to use. Once I'm back, I craft the full aerospec armor. It grants me massive boosts to my magic ability and increased fall speed. It'll also drop feathers on the enemy when I'm heavily damaged as well. I pay a visit to my fledgling mushroom farm and find out that I finally have enough to fight the elusive Crabulon. I quickly snatch them all up and return home to craft his spawn item, the Decapitator Sprout. While I'm there, I realise that I can also craft the Overloaded Sludge and the Odd Shell, spawn items for the Slime God and Giant Clam respectively. I hurriedly rush to the desert to summon the Giant Clam and challenge him. He is another boss fought completely out of order, so it's no real challenge. Funnily enough, he doesn't grant boss zen, so the real struggle was the monsters that were moping around the place beforehand. After a while, he perishes and I get the Amidas's pendant. It's a pretty decent accessory, but we can't rock it because my accessory slots are precious and few. I take his relic back to the base, extending the Hall of Accomplishments to make room for the rest, Giant Clam taking his rightful place just before the Eye of Cthulhu. I fall down to the glowing mushroom biome to engage Crabulon. Finally. I decided on leaving his area as a wide open space, as I didn't think I would have too much trouble with him. I just loop over and around him, firing my Shade Rain Staff over and over. This item is pretty good for the stage of the game, so I clear it no problem. I figure he might have a drop I'm interested in, so I kill him a second time, but I don't find anything of value. I take his relic to the hall and place it down with pride. I've also missed Queen Bee, which I require a stinger in order to summon. I set up an underground jungle up to the left of the failed underground desert, placing a heap of mud down and planting jungle grass seeds on top. While I waited, I figured I may as well try my hand against the slime god. It wasn't his turn yet, but the jungle grass was yet to grow. I spawned him using the item I crafted earlier, summoning 2 giant slimes with a ton of health. The slime god is this tiny little guy, and he inhabits one of the 2 slime paladins and infuses them with greater abilities. My strategy was to focus him down one at a time, starting with the crimson slime. When they ran out of health, they split into 2 smaller slimes, and I stayed the course, drawing out the faster crimson slimes and unloading the Shade Rain Staff at them. Once they fell, I began whittling away at the remaining corruption slime who went through the same pattern. Once both were dead, we're told that the slime god flees to fight another day. But just as long as I kept my relic and my treasure bag, I really couldn't care less. He drops us a pair of magic weapons that are actually pretty decent. The Eldritch Tome that fires red tentacles towards the cursor, and the Abyssal Tome that fires slow, dark energy orbs. They're decent, so I hang on to them for now, reforging them to mythical like a good boy. Because I'm so impatient, I decided to go down and plant more jungle grass seeds I bought from the black market dealer. This finishes the biome and we're able to get stingers for Queen Bee. I rushed back home, remembering that I could use the purified gel drop from the slime god to craft starter gel armor. I equipped the Mage set, which is a direct upgrade to the Aerospec set, and it has a nice little bonus, giving us invulnerability for a short time after taking more than 100 damage at once. I still need 5 honey blocks for the Queen Bee summon item, the Abomination. I have 50 buckets of honey for my starting items, so I pour them out and cover them with water. Boom! We have the Abomination. This fight must take place in the underground jungle, so I dive off my platform into the depths where I set up a very rudimentary arena and summon her in. This fight isn't really anything special, but I cycle through a few different weapons to see what's performing the best, and it seems like the Flame Lash is the best for me because it takes care of the aiming, which is something I was struggling with. She falls after some time and I get my sweet rewards, a treasure bag and her relic. Nothing important was in the bag, so I return home and add her relic to the Hall of Accomplishments. I wasn't really sure whether or not I would do Deerclops, but I'm absolutely blazing through this mod pack, so I decide that I should. I'm all about content after all, baby. I need Finks Fur for the deer thing, the item to summon him. To get a Finks, I must make an artificial snow biome underground. I take a stack of ice down and make a small platform, and before I know it, I've slain 2 Finkses and I'm ready to go up. I craft the deer thing and take it over to the desert to summon him. He flies in and our fight begins. There's really not much to this fight, if I'm honest. Compared to his Eternity Mode fight, watch my other video for that one, this is an absolute cakewalk. I can stay up high and launch the Shade Rain Staff at him repeatedly, and he can't do any damage back. The Starter Gel armor combined with the warding prefix on every accessory allows us to tank most of his attacks. After a while, we whittle him down and get his relic. I hurry over and add it to the lineup, and then we can see there's only one big bad left, the Wall of Flesh. I'm excited to see how the Wall of Flesh will behave in a world without blocks, and I'm not really sure what to expect. I go down with an infinite stack of wooden platforms, but a lava slime quickly convinces me that that wasn't a good idea. Now that we have a demolitionist, I can finally purchase dynamite for the double obsidian insta-bridge item. This item creates 2 platforms across the entire world from obsidian, which has the notable bonus of not melting on contact with lava. I place it down and I start heading east. With a little luck, I managed to find a voodoo demon really quickly, which is the last step in my master plan. When I get a decent distance from the center, I make a small pool of lava out of mud and throw the voodoo doll in, spawning the Wall of Flesh and lagging the hell out of my game. Interestingly, the Wall of Flesh has spawned and seemingly only has a mouth. I soon realized this isn't true as lasers begin to periodically shoot upward, telling me that the eyes are just really far away. This is really good for us, as all we have to worry about is the mouth. Although it has way higher defense, it doesn't really matter as we're not in that much danger from the eye's lasers and their minions. All we have to do is dodge the occasional scythe and worm, and that's it. After a while of using the Shade Rain Staff's damage and keeping level with his mouth, he falls, dropping a wealth of awesome items. As part of the progression, I'm giving the usual Cone Hammer, but also a titanium pickaxe. As usual, the treasure bag grants us the illustrious Demon Heart, increasing our accessory capacity by 1. This is very handy, as we also managed to get the Sorcerer's Emblem, which we equip immediately. I take the Wall of Flesh relic back to the Hall of Accomplishments and place it down, a task well completed. Now standing amongst all of my achievements, I take a breath knowing what comes next. Hard mode. But that's all for this video. This has been a fun little experiment, I really hope you enjoyed it. The Infernum run will return, but I was just doing this while I couldn't stream during the week. It was relatively quick to make, which is a weird departure from my usual antics. If you like this video, I urge you to like and subscribe. I'm so close to 5,000 subscribers and I promise that the content will only get better as I figure out how this whole YouTube thing works. I'll be streaming weekends, so if that's something you're interested in, please join the Discord to be updated when those happen. links in the description. Alright, peace guys.